Good afternoon and a warm welcome to this webinar on EU transition and the future immigration system. My name is Robert Lloyd-Griffiths and I am the National Director of the Institute of Directors here in Wales, and I have the pleasure and privilege to chair this afternoon's session, which will last for approximately 50 minutes and be in two parts. First of all, I will be welcoming the Secretary of State for Wales, the Right Honourable Simon Hart, and I'll also be welcoming the Minister for Future Borders and Immigration, Kevin Foster. We really want participation and we really welcome your questions. So if you do want to ask a question, please will you log into the chat mechanism, put your name in and then accept the terms. So we have a short period of time, only 50 minutes, so please, if we don't get to your question, we will respond to you in the fullness of time and obviously quite shortly. So now it's my great pleasure to welcome the Secretary of State for Wales, the Right Honourable Simon Hart. Secretary of State.
Thank you, Rob, very much for the intro. Thanks also for hosting this event. For people on the call, I'm very well aware, firstly, that we shouldn't keep you too long because there are a lot of competing pressures at the moment. And so the last thing you need is a lecture from us for any length of time. But what we're trying to do is to get around as many business interests in Wales as we possibly can in the next few days and weeks, just in readiness for the end of the transition period, to hear principally from you as to where you think there might be pinch points, where there might be a lack of clarity, anything that we can do at a UK government level, or indeed if there's things you'd like us to take up with Welsh government for areas of responsibility which are theirs. So this is as much about us hearing from you as it is you hearing from us, I hope. And that's why we've got my colleague Daniel from the Home Office and Kevin also from the Home Office, as has just been mentioned, because they are the experts in some of the really complicated and challenging areas which I know you are grappling with at the moment. So as far as we're concerned, please don't take this as the only engagement that you can have with us. You, as you know, are welcome to get in touch with our officials in any of the UK government departments at any time. We're keen to make sure that this process is as pain-free and as frictionless, if I can use that expression, as possible. We're trying to make sure that as much information is out there in the easiest to interpret form there is, and we're also relying on people on this call and on other calls that we've had to also act as helpers and mentors for other businesses which might be either struggling to work out exactly which way they need to prepare themselves and who might be able to glean from the knowledge of those who've already gone through the process. So I think, Robert, if that's okay, that's probably all I want to say to begin with, and hand over to Kevin and Daniel for the main event.
Thank you very much. I'd now like to welcome Kevin Foster, who is the Parliamentary Under Secretary of State and Minister for Future Borders and Immigration. Minister.
Well, thank you, Robert, for the invitation. Thank you, Secretary of State, for the introduction as well. And it's great to be in Wales again. Obviously, fond memories of my time in the Wales office, albeit sadly in a virtual capacity today. And I will start by acknowledging that we recognise in the Home Office this is a challenging time for employers in Wales, as it is for the whole country, and the Home Office is committed to doing what it can to support businesses, not only through the current period, but also as we look towards the recovery from coronavirus, particularly with the positive news we've had over the last couple of weeks on vaccines potentially becoming available. But with looking ahead to the recovery, it's why we believe it's even more critically important our new immigration system can be part of that. And one, by encouraging investment in the UK's domestic workforce and helping get people back to work, particularly those who face uncertainty about the future of their job or may have already been made unemployed across Wales. And secondly, for ensuring businesses can still attract the brightest and best talent from across the world and could go through a process that's perhaps a bit simpler to what they may be used to than if you've been recruiting via our current non-EEA migration system. And we believe that there's three tenets that very much apply to our new immigration system, which is that it will be fairer because we're going to treat people from every part of the world based on their skills and what they have to offer, not fundamentally basing our migration system on where your passport is issued by. Firmer, because we will be able to make more of our own decisions about how the border operates from the 1st of January, and we will be looking to tackle some of the abuse that goes on, particularly our protection routes. And then skills-led, because we're very much determined that this system very much values the skills people have, and we're broadening it so it takes into case a broader version of skills rather than the current non-EEA system, which very much focuses on academic skills with it being set at graduate level, whereas the new skilled worker route is at school leaver level, again, through feedback about being able to recruit some of those skills that are actually very important, but aren't necessarily quite as academic as a degree level threshold would imply. And to be clear, the new rules were laid on the 22nd of October before Parliament, and this is following the Immigration and Social Security Coordination Bill, followed that by receiving royal assent on the 11th of November, and that bill is now an Act of Parliament, which confirms free movement will end on the 31st of December, and that the new work routes will come into effect from the 1st of January, although will open, particularly, for example, the ones like the skilled worker route will be open for applications from the 1st of December to allow employers to start making applications in time for people to arrive in January. And this is Home Office, I want to be clear, we're not closing the door to the United Kingdom. What we're doing is designing a system where we can choose who comes through it, based on the positive impact they can make to our nation, not which country their passport is from. And as touched on earlier, we do need to be realistic about the effect the coronavirus has had on the labour market and our economy. And we do want to see employers first focusing on looking to get people back into work in our domestic economy, including those who've come from Europe under free movement rules, rather than seeing immigration as the first resort for recruitment issues. Now, we do believe that there are many people who represent the best of talent that we want to see in the UK. So people have already seen some of our global talents we're bringing into line. And we also are looking to streamline some of the processes of recruitment. So, for example, we're removing the resident labour market test and we're suspending the cap on skilled worker, which we think will take about 8 weeks off the time it takes to recruit someone via our core skilled worker visa routes. And that's because really we do want employers to focus on training and investing in our domestic workforce, but we still recognise there is a need to bring in talent from abroad, and also to allow mixed teams as well, where you may be trading internationally. I do recognise these proposals will represent significant change for employers in the UK, and that's particularly those who've only recruited from the UK or the EU. But we do believe quite firmly that these are part of our recovery from the coronavirus. They are part of developing a system for the future, and we will continue to monitor the trends in the UK labour market and in Wales to ensure that this system is responsive and does deliver what we need it to deliver, both for our economy and for employers. I think the one thing I would say is that one thing we won't be including in the new migration system is a route to recruit abroad at or near the minimum wage. We don't believe that's the right way of going about things, particularly in some sectors that have very heavily relied on migration over recent years. And certainly the advice of the Migration Advisory Committee, which the government asked to look at this area and to advise us on the new system, an independent panel of labour market experts, made clear that actually the people who lose out when we create schemes like that are the workers in those sectors themselves. And actually it can reinforce issues if people don't see rewarding career paths, investment in staff, and actually a future that might be a good one for them in a sector, but instead see that immigration is providing the alternative, then it can compound issues rather than make them better. But certainly in support of the changes we're making, we have launched a comprehensive programme of communications and engagements to help employers understand the system and how to prepare, with a comprehensive suite of guidance products already available via gov.uk, which my officials will talk to you about later. And additionally, despite the challenges we've had, we've already facilitated over 160 virtual engagement events across the whole of the UK and across a wide range of sectors. So we do have people who take part in them. Very much welcome the initiative to arrange this one today, and will continue to be available to explain through. And it's one of the reasons why we published the core details of the skilled worker visa back in July, to give employers a chance to familiarise themselves with it. And for those wondering, if you are already a Tier 2 skilled worker, a licensed sponsor, we will roll over that license into the new skilled worker route. So to be clear, that if you're already a sponsor, we're looking to minimise some of it. It's been hassle. But if you are looking to recruit outside the UK from the 1st of January, you will now need to look at becoming a licensed sponsor. So I'd like to close by saying the UK government very much recognises and values the contribution immigration makes to our society, culture and the economy here in Wales and across the rest of the United Kingdom. And every Welsh business and employer has a critical part to play as we take this new system forward. And I know many of you are already taking steps to, and I urge everyone to join us in a shared vision to transform and level up every part of Wales and of our United Kingdom by playing an active part in this new system. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Minister. Thank you, Secretary of State. I'm conscious that your time is limited with us this afternoon for your other diary commitments, and very shortly we'll be coming on, as you alluded to a presentation by Home Office colleagues on some further details. But before we come on to there's a couple of questions in the chat mechanism which I wonder if I might address to you, please. First question: how will the new immigration system ensure businesses can continue to access the supply of labour they need from the EU? I'm not sure who might want to take that one.
I'll take that one. First, we have to be clear, the era of an EU, non-EU migration system is coming to an end. So there won't be separate rules for the European Union versus the rest of the economy. I think that's one of the big things we do have to make clear to employers, is that we're not going to have a system of EU recruitment versus non-EU recruitment anymore. That said, we would say that what we've looked at carefully is the statistics for the labour market, and the thresholds around allowing access to skills that are not available in the UK actually becomes slightly easier to recruit on a global basis into a range of skills. But for more general recruitment, and I'd say particularly at the moment when we really are seeing some quite worrying figures about unemployment in some parts of Wales as well, not just across the whole United Kingdom, that in the first instance, employers should be looking to the UK labour market for recruitment. And certainly in our own engagement as the Home Office, many employers are doing some fantastic work with things like the Kickstart scheme and other areas, but we do every so often still pick up on the odd one who's coming to the Home Office first, not to our colleagues in the DWP for recruitment. They need to turn that around. DWP first, us second.
Thank you very much indeed for that, Minister. The second question that's come in on the chat mechanism: how flexible is the new system to respond in future to changes in UK labour markets?
It's fairly flexible. One of the things we're changing, which many people won't have picked up on, is the Migration Advisory Committee's role. Traditionally, it's only done a report, or a commission as it's called, when myself as the Immigration Minister or the Home Secretary has asked them to do it. We've actually freed them up to, one, do work on their own commissions, and two, we're asking them to do an annual report because we want to get more into a sort of regular commentary on where the migration system is going, and that therefore allows, one, stakeholders and business sectors to engage regularly with the Migration Advisory Committee, and secondly, that then they can comment on emerging trends, or if they see themselves as issues they want to address alongside just dealing with the issues they're asked to by the Home Office. So the system is flexible, and of course there are changes that happen as well. For example, in January we'll create the new settlement route for British nationals overseas resident in Hong Kong, which we estimate could see a large number of people resettle in the UK. So again, there is ability for flex through it, but I think where we won't see the core fundamentals, things like not having this two-tier system between EEA and non-EEA, those sort of fundamentals will stay.
Okay, and a quick question: are there restrictions on employing people from Ireland?
If you are an Irish national, no. Given the Belfast Agreement and others, UK and Irish nationals, citizens do not need permission, do not need immigration permission. They're considered settled here in the UK. So if an employer is employing an Irish national, they don't need any further permission. And whilst Irish nationals can apply to the EUSS, our settlement scheme for those who come into free movement, there's no obligation for them to do so.
Okay, well, thank you very much indeed for answering those questions. I know that there will be quite a lot of detail covered in the presentation by your colleagues coming up very shortly. In the meantime, once again, can I thank you, Minister, and you, Secretary of State, for attending this afternoon. And we'll look forward to hearing more information from UK government, from the website, and all other aspects of information gathering over the coming weeks.
Robert, thank you, and thanks to everybody on the call for your patience and forbearing. I know this is, there's pressures coming in from all angles at the moment, and so we really are determined, as you've heard from Kevin, to try and just make sure that we can shoulder some of the burden from that. So do please make full use of us.
Thank you very much indeed, and we will certainly do that. Thank you. I'd now like to turn to the second part of this webinar and introduce you to Daniel Petriello and Richard Jackson from the Home Office, who have a presentation on what businesses and citizens need to do to be ready for the end of the transition period, and specifically the future immigration system. And following that, there'll be a continued opportunity to engage with a Q&A. So if I hand over first then to Richard.
To Daniel, I think.
Well, to Daniel. Well done.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for our invitation to come and speak here today. So my name's Dan Petriello. I work on the Home Office's external engagement team. I'm joined by Richard today, and together we're going to give you some key information about the new immigration system and the EU settlement scheme. Like everyone else, we've had to make the shift to online engagement. I've got to say it's largely been successful, as the Minister alluded to there. I think this is about our 167th virtual event we've done since the start of lockdown, but things can still go awry. So if you can't hear me or my face freezes in an unsavory position, please someone shout in the chat. But we've got plenty to get through, so we will get started. What we'd like to do, first of all, is just do a quick recap on the EU settlement scheme. It's really important for citizens and employers to know the situation with resident EU nationals. So could we start the slideshow, please? Okay, just 1 second. Okay, great stuff. Okay, so what we will do is go through the EU settlement scheme, and I'll start with just some key information that you need to be aware of. Okay, so EU, EEA and Swiss citizens and their family members still have plenty of time to apply to the EU settlement scheme. The scheme is for those living in the UK by the 31st of December of this year, and they have until the 30th of June of next year to make an application. So during that period, right up until the 30th of June 2021, employers, landlords and public service providers will continue to accept passports and national ID cards of EU citizens as evidence of permission, as they do now. The latest stats show that we've received over 4.26 million applications to the EU settlement scheme, and there's been over 4 million people receive grant of status already, and we're still continuing to receive thousands of applications every day. We talk about the scheme, but what is it? So the scheme's open to EU, EEA, Swiss citizens and their family members resident in the UK before the end of this year. The scheme will give them a status under UK law, and it protects their rights so they'll continue to be eligible for public services, public funds, pensions, as they are now. It will also enable them to apply for British citizenship in the future, should they wish to do so. From the offset, the Home Office has been really clear that we want to make this as straightforward a process as possible, for which we're looking for reasons to grant people status, not to refuse them. Who needs to apply? Well, the short answer is everybody. Those who are here before the 31st of December 2020 and wish to live and work here after that date. Those with permanent residence under EU law, so you may have seen blue cards with a vignette in, they're issued under EU law, so those individuals still need to apply to the EU settlement scheme and get that status under UK law. Those with indefinite leave to remain, acquired historically, they do not need to apply to the scheme if they have indefinite leave to remain, but may do so if they wish to. Irish nationals don't need to apply to the EU settlement scheme, but again, they can do if they wish to do so. So how do you make an application? Well, it's an online application process, which is free. And there's a 3-step process following which citizens will be granted either settled or pre-settled status. So I've mentioned that there are 3 steps. So those 3 steps are essentially the identity process. So we need to know that the person applying is a European national. They can use a passport or national ID card to prove that status. And they can do that in person. We have sites that are open for people to do that with local authorities. That's obviously COVID restrictions permitting. You can send your passport in to us in the post, or you can use our app, which lets you open the biometric chip of your identity document and then take a photo to match that data. So you can do that. That's the most common way of people doing it. And then they don't have to send an identity document away. The second part of the process is residency. So we just need to know that that person has been here in the UK. We're not interested in whether they've been working, whether they've been studying, how much they had in their bank. The ethos of the scheme is just that that person has been here. And the easiest way to do that is by providing a national insurance number. If there are any activity against DWP or HMRC records when we run our checks, we can class that as residency. And 75% of applicants who choose to provide their national insurance number don't need to provide us with any additional information. And the next stage is criminality. So we do a criminality check on every application. I mentioned that there's 2 statuses. So we have settled and pre-settled status. So eligible citizens receive either status based on the information that they've given us. But whether someone has pre-settled or settled status, they've been accepted through the scheme and have secured their rights to remain here. Pre-settled status is for those who've been in the UK for less than 5 years. Everyone who gets pre-settled status receives 5 years leave to remain in the UK, and then they can apply for settled status in the future if they wish to do so and have completed more than 5 years continuous residency in the UK. Settled status is for those who've been in the UK for 5 years or longer. And for settled status, a person needs to demonstrate 5 years continuous residency in the UK, and that is 6 months within every 12-month period. With settled status, a person can remain in the UK for as long as they wish. They receive indefinite leave to remain. They can also leave the UK for up to 5 years without that status lapsing. They can also apply for British citizenship in the future if they want to do so and they meet the requirements. But both of those statuses will enable EU nationals to live, work, use the NHS, education, and access public funds if they're eligible after the end of the transition period. Now, there's a large amount of support available. So we have a designated contact centre, which is manned by casework trained staff who can go into sort of quite detailed queries on there. We've got a variety of toolkits that cover employers, local authorities, community groups. We've got materials translated into 26 different languages. We've got videos on the application process, and we've also made £17 million available to organisations across the UK to support those EU nationals who need additional help to make an application. And there are plenty of really good funded organisations across Wales to help EU nationals in Wales to make applications. In terms of Wales and the EU settlement scheme, we've had almost 71,000 applications from Wales. So the top nationalities applying to Wales are Poland, Romania, Portugal, Bulgaria, and Italy. And we also know that EU nationals in Wales are more likely to receive settled status as opposed to pre-settled status. That's higher than the average for the whole of the UK, which means generally the EU nationals in Wales have been in Wales for a longer period of time. And the top 5 local authorities for applications in Wales are Cardiff, Newport, Wrexham, Swansea and Flint. And we also publish all that information and various breakdowns of who's made applications, all available via gov.uk. So I think what the plan is that we'll move straight over to the points-based immigration system, and I'll work through that, and then we'll take your questions on both the EU settlement scheme and the points-based system all in one go. So yeah, we will start working through this now. So I'll go straight through onto the points-based immigration system. Okay, just 1 second. Okay. So we'll start with, as the Minister mentioned, the sort of flagship route, the skilled worker route, and I'll go through the sponsorship process. So, skilled worker route. We're making the changes so it's simpler for employers to attract the best and brightest from around the world to come to the UK to complement the skills that we already have. As set out in the February policy statement, anyone coming to the UK for work, including EU citizens, will need to demonstrate they meet a specific set of requirements for which they will score points. A particular feature of this route is it gives employers flexibility by allowing applicants to trade points if they have relevant qualifications or work in a shortage occupation. It's more flexible than the existing Tier 2 route for skilled workers. So I will go through some of the key requirements now. So the applicant must have a job offer from an approved sponsor. The applicant must speak English to an acceptable standard. There will be a criminality threshold. So the job must be at a minimum skill level. So that is CQFW level 3 or equivalent. So that's RQF level 3 or A level equivalent. Workers, the key thing to note is that it's not that the worker needs to hold a formal qualification, it's the skill level of the job that they are doing, which is important. So that the applicant themselves doesn't need to hold that formal level of qualification. And migrants must meet the required salary for their job. This will either be the general salary threshold, which on the advice of the Migration Advisory Committee, we are lowering to 25,600, or it will be the going rate for the job if it's higher than the general salary threshold. In terms of changes to the current Tier 2 route, as the Minister mentioned, there will be no cap on these routes. The cap has been suspended. There will be no resident labour market test, which is being removed. That skills threshold has been expanded and the salary threshold lowered. There'll be tradable points for certain characteristics, and I'll go through what that means in practice and run through a couple of examples. Additionally, the 12-month cooling off period and the 6-year maximum length of stay have been removed in this route. So when we say points, what do we actually mean? Well, an applicant needs to score a total of 70 points for a skilled worker visa by meeting those mandatory criteria. So having a job offer from an approved sponsor at the right skill level and the English language requirements, they will score 50 points. To qualify for that skilled worker visa, they must obtain a further 20 tradable points through a combination of points for their salary, a job on the shortage occupation list, or a relevant PhD. So in the document that we published in July, Annex E of that further details document sets out the different going rates. So for instance, a civil engineer is required to earn £35,000 as that is the going rate for that profession. However, it is possible to reduce the salary requirement if the migrant can score points for their attributes or the nature of their job. If the job is on the shortage occupation list, the migrant can get a 20% discount. If the migrant has a PhD that is relevant to their job, that's worth 10%, rising to 20% if the PhD is in a STEM subject. New entrants to the labour market can also secure a 30% discount. These discounts apply to whatever sum that migrant would otherwise needed to earn, so be that the general salary threshold or the going rate for their profession, and there is a general floor of £20,480 below which a salary cannot drop. There are also a number of public sector occupations which are subject to separate arrangements based on public pay scales. We will retain the ability in the future to increase the number of tradable attributes to help us meet the needs of the economy. However, those mandatory requirements won't be tradable. Now, we've got a suite of information that we will send out after the session, and some of the toolkits that we've got go through various examples and very different scenarios of how you can trade points, but I'm just going to quickly run through two with you now. So in this example, the individual is a lab technician. They've met the mandatory requirements, so they score their 50 points, but the salary they have been offered is £21,000, which is below the general threshold salary of £25,600, which is appropriate for this profession. Because of that salary being below the threshold, they don't score any points for their salary, but as it's above that lower limit of 20,480, they can try and achieve the 20 points in another way. In this scenario, the applicant holds a PhD in a STEM subject, which is relevant to their job, and that provides them with those additional 20 points, and therefore they accumulate the 70-point total. In the next example, the individual has been offered a job as a mechanical engineer. They meet the mandatory requirements, so that gives them 50 points. Now, for this role, a mechanical engineer is required to earn 33,400. That's the going rate for that profession. The salary that this individual has been offered is 26,750. So they don't score any points for their salary. However, as this is a job which is on the shortage occupation list, the applicant receives 20 points for that role, and that's how they reach the 70-point total in this scenario. So we've engaged extensively and listened carefully to business, and we're making a number of changes to the way that a migrant can be sponsored to come to the UK. We are removing the resident labour market test, suspending the cap on numbers. We'll no longer be issuing certificates of sponsorship on a monthly panel. And cumulatively, this should mean a reduction in the process of around 8 weeks. It's really important that employers understand they don't need to become a sponsor or sponsor anyone who's from the resident labour market, and that includes those 4.26 million EU citizens who've applied to stay under the EU settlement scheme. Additionally, we'll also allow migrants to switch into different routes without having to leave the UK, though they will need to meet the requirements of the route they are switching into. We've been working with employers directly on this through a number of our advisory groups, including a dedicated group for the needs of small businesses. We are making further improvements to the sponsorship system. In fact, it's pretty much a whole-scale overhaul, which will be in process for 2022, and which we are currently working through with users. We mentioned I suppose the key takeaway for a business is whether or not it needs to become a sponsor, but what does that actually entail? So the first port of call is to check whether any planned vacancies are eligible under one of our licenses, and we'll send around all the links so people can do that. If you do decide you want to become a sponsor, there will be documentation that has to be provided to support an application. In most cases, it's around 4 documents. They might include things like financial records or the hierarchy of your management structure. And to get a license, you can't have any unspent criminal convictions for immigration offences or certain other crimes. And these are all explained in the guidance. When you apply for your license, you'll need to appoint a person or persons within your business to manage the sponsorship process and to actually access the sponsor management system. You'll apply for your license online and pay the appropriate fee dependent upon the size of your business and the roles that you're planning to fill. Once you have selected a candidate, they must make a visa application to work in the UK, and you must first endorse your prospective employee's visa via your sponsorship license account, and then issue them with an electronic certificate of sponsorship. You must pay the immigration skills surcharge if it's required, and the employee must then submit a visa application under the same category as your license. If your prospective employee's application is successful, they may then travel to the UK to start working. As I've mentioned, though, we are currently redesigning this process, and we're actively consulting with stakeholders at the moment. I'll just quickly run through some of the other key routes that are changing, and then we'll go through and work through the questions that have been submitted. Okay, so we've also introduced our health and care visa, which is open to all nationalities who have a confirmed job offer in one of the defined healthcare professions within the NHS, the social care sector, or for NHS commissioned service providers. The main applicant must still meet the requirements of the skilled worker route, including the relevant skill and salary threshold, but there is a fast track entry process with reduced application fees and dedicated support throughout the application process. Eligible individuals are able to bring their families with them, and there'll be an exemption from the immigration health surcharge for both applicants and their families. From January 2021, we're also extending the global talent route to EU nationals. Under this route, the most highly skilled workers who can achieve the required level of points are able to enter the UK without a job offer if they're endorsed by a Home Office recognised endorsing body. This route is designed to attract recognised global leaders and the best and brightest in science, humanities, engineering, the arts and digital technology. Some of the key changes to this route are the criteria for consideration of senior appointments. So they're being revised so that the route caters for people at earlier stages of the career, not just those who are more established. And the definition of the types of academic and research roles that qualify is also being expanded. And a points-based assessment is being introduced in line with the points-based system. In the longer term, we're exploring the creation of a broader unsponsored route, which may allow a small number of those most highly skilled workers to come to the UK without a job offer, and that's something we are exploring with stakeholders at the moment. What's clear is that the UK's points-based system does not seek to replicate free movement in any way, and will not include a route for those who do not meet our skills and salary thresholds. We know that this is going to require a shift to concentrate on investment in technology, automation, and training up of UK's domestic labour force, particularly given the impact of COVID-19. We believe that the new immigration system provides greater flexibility for employers with changes to those salary and skills thresholds. As mentioned, we've already got over 4.26 million EU nationals having already applied to stay in the UK, with thousands still applying every day. And we hope to provide further flexibility with both the Youth Mobility Scheme and the Seasonal Workers Pilot. Our student route our new student route is actually already live. So that was the first one of the new routes to go live and opened on the 5th of October and is now open and receiving applications. There will be no limit on numbers, and it is in fact the government's ambition to increase the number of international students to 600,000. This route's based on the existing Tier 4 route for non-EU migrants, which is working well. And we're also introducing a graduate route for next summer, which will allow those who've completed a degree to stay in the UK for 2 years and work at any skill level, and then switch into one of them skilled work routes if they find a suitable job. They'll have 3 years to do so if they're a PhD graduate, and that's on the proviso that they've graduated from an education provider with a good track record of compliance. In terms of visitors, anyone can apply to visit the UK. They must either apply for a visa before arrival or seek leave to enter at the border. In most cases, visitors can come to the UK for up to 6 months. A visitor may enter the UK multiple times within that 6 months, but they may not live in the UK by means of repeat visits. We will permit study of up to 6 months under that standard visit route. And the UK government has said that its intention is that citizens of the EU and Switzerland will not require visas to come and visit the UK. In terms of January 2021, the biggest change for a number of our main economic routes is that EU nationals will be brought into scope. So there's a long list of potential routes on there. And you can see it includes routes such as the Startup and Innovator and our charity routes. In the longer term, underpinning these routes will be simplified rules and guidance, and we'll be making the best use of technology and best practice from the EU settlement scheme. So next steps. So the immigration bill has now completed its passage through Parliament, as the immigration minister mentioned before. The bill has received its royal assent, and that is the legal basis for ending free movement at the end of the year. The remaining routes will open on the 1st of December for those wishing to come to the UK from the 1st of January. And as ever, we just continue to highlight that EU citizens and their family members resident in the UK before the end of the year will still be eligible for the EU settlement scheme, and they will have until the end of June of next year to make an application. Now, we'll send all these materials out as a sort of pack at the end of the session, but we've developed a large suite of materials that cover the various different routes, how to sponsor a worker, a sort of employer's guide to the new system, a guide to the sponsorship system, guides aimed specifically at EU citizens wanting to come here to work or to study. We've got toolkits for the skilled worker visa, the graduate route and the global talent route. We've got like introduction packs, and we've got packs that go into a bit more detail. We also have materials that are translated into 25 languages, including Welsh, and those versions are on gov.uk now. I'm going to take a breath now. If we can stop sharing the slides. I appreciate that was an awful lot of information, and I'm sure there will be lots of questions in the chat function. Richard, I don't know whether you can see the chat function. I haven't been looking at it because I've been looking at the slides.
I can, yes, we've had a few come in.
Yeah, shall I ask the questions and then field them to whoever wishes to take them? So the first question is, how will the immigration changes affect freelancers, independent contracts, for example, electrical engineers? What process will they be required to follow in order to work on a short-term contract in the UK who come to work from Europe?
Okay, shall I take that one? Give Dan a chance to catch his breath.
Yes, indeed. Thank you.
So there isn't a specific route in the new system for freelancers and contractors, but there's a number of possible options. So in the skilled worker route that we've been talking about, we generally talk about sponsors as being employers, but they don't actually have to be a direct employer. If an organisation has contracted someone to work for them as a freelancer or on a self-employed basis, they can still sponsor that person as a skilled worker, as long as they're able to meet their basic sponsor duties. They don't need to be the direct employer. So that's one option. Other options are some of the other routes that Dan talked about. So we're looking at introducing an unsponsored, what we refer to as a pure points-based route that you mentioned. That will come online in future, and that might be another route. And there are also any number of other routes which allow people to take any work they like, including self-employment. So things like our youth mobility routes, the new graduate route. So a range of different options, but nothing specifically aimed directly at contractors.
Thank you, Richard. The next question, what assessment has been made of the potential merits of including A, coded welders, B, steel fabricators, C, mechanical fitters, and D, pipe fitters on the shortage occupation list, with large MOD bills starting next year and contracts already placed?
Okay, so all of those jobs come come within the skilled worker route under the expanded skills threshold. They all meet that level 3 benchmark. At the moment, they aren't on the shortage occupation list. The Migration Advisory Committee, who are independent of the government, review that shortage occupation list for us. They have recommended that welding trades be added. The others weren't included in their recommendations this time round, but they do review that list on an annual basis, in line with whatever the latest labour market data is showing the needs are. I think it's important to note here that even if a job isn't on the shortage occupation list, they can still qualify under the skilled worker route. It just means they don't get that discount through the extra points they would need to meet the main salary threshold of 25,600, or qualify for a discount through tradable points in some other way. The shortage occupation list is really just one way of getting those tradable points.
Thank you very much for that question. How does this system work when individuals are working on a rota system, 8 weeks in the UK and then return to the EU for a rest period of 4 weeks, should we say?
Yeah, so visas are all multi-entry. It's not come in once and you'd need to reapply each time you came in. A worker could be sponsored on that basis as long as the sponsor's willing to keep that sponsorship on an ongoing basis. And their pay overall across the year meets the requirements. There's no particular residency requirement that says you must spend X amount of time in the UK to keep your visa going. There is a requirement if you want to settle permanently in the UK, but we do allow quite generous periods outside the UK. It can be up to 180 days every year. And even if you're out for more than that, you might not be able to qualify for settle, but you can still have a visa and you can still renew that visa again and again as many times as you like.
Thank you very much for that. That's Richard, is there a mechanism to hire skilled workers on a self-employed basis for short-term contracts?
I think that's quite similar to the question we already had about independent contractors. I just say that there's no particular length of time that someone has to be sponsored for on a skilled work visa. It can be anything from a few days to up to 5 years at a time. It's flexible in that way.
Okay, thank you for that. I know we've covered so much this afternoon and so much detail, but what on the points-based system, what is the key takeaway for a business to be aware of, do you think?
Well, that's a good question. Any thoughts, Dan?
Yeah, so I think that if you're not currently a user of the sponsorship system, it's a decision for a business to take as to whether they need to become a sponsor or not. So where do you recruit from? What's your recruitment profile going to look like moving forward? And do you need to apply to become a sponsor? And if you do so, you need to go away, read the guidance that we send out, and make sure you meet the criteria to become a sponsor. Also, we don't ask that you police your staff into applying for the EU settlement scheme if you employ EU nationals now at present, but we do ask that you signpost any EU nationals in your workforce to official sources of information. It's genuinely a really straightforward and it's free for people to do so. So we really want to encourage people to get their status under the EU settlement scheme. So yeah, my two takeaways would be, just if you're not currently a user of the immigration system, do you need to become a sponsor? And if you have EU nationals, please signpost them to official sources of information.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed for that. And one final question, what happens if the workers we require are not on the list, shipbuilding and ship construction?
So again, shipbuilders qualify under that new broader skills threshold. They're listed down as a skilled occupation. They're not a shortage occupation, so again, they would either have to score the 20 points through their salary alone or through a combination of their salary and one of the other tradable points options.
Thanks for that. And I'm going to contradict myself because we have a very last question, just hot in the chat section. If a European freelancer is working in the UK under free movement, but has not applied to gain settled status because they are not a resident, what will their immigration status be on the 1st of January? Quite complex.
Yeah. Do you want to take it on, Dan, or shall I?
So, I mean, I suppose the first thing to say is it depends very much on the individual circumstances. So that if that person is in the UK before the end of this year, so they spent some time in the UK, so if that person was in the UK on the 31st of December, they would still be able to apply to the EU settlement scheme and get themselves 5 years leave to remain under pre-settled status. So it's quite a broad question in terms of an individual's circumstances and any time they've spent in the UK. So we can't really give a definitive answer to that question. But I would always say that if there's a European national who is backwards and forwards to the UK, have a look at the guidance of the EU settlement scheme and see whether they would meet the criteria to get pre-settled status. Richard, I don't know whether there's anything you want to add on that.
Just to repeat the point I think you made in the presentation, they've got until the end of June next year to apply for that under the EU settlement scheme. It isn't something they need to apply by 1st of January.
Well, thanks very much indeed, Daniel, and thank you very much indeed, Richard. A lot of information there this afternoon. And as the Secretary of State and the Minister alluded to at the start of the webinar, the UK government is there to help and support businesses through the end of transition. This webinar will be distributed afterwards through the UK government channels and also through partnerships. So there's more information you require, then please do find and log into that. In the meantime, a particularly important website is the gov.uk/transition, which will include details of support and webinars across UK government. Point to remember is the Wales office event next Thursday, the 3rd of December, partnered with HMRC, which is a business readiness webinar and part of the series. So all that remains is to thank you very much once again for your attention. Thank you for being with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you and Pranam Dar.